So if you want to, don't say your special things until you want to, unless you want to share to everybody. Okay, welcome everybody to OS Austin chapter for January 2022. We made it through another year. Unfortunately, just virtual, but we made it through another year, and glad to hear most people, and see people's pictures and stuff. And now it's not advancing. Yeah. Okay, whatever. Chapter leadership, that's me at the top, Kyle Smith. You can reach me at kylesmith@owas.org. We have different other chapter leaders, Kate, Matt, Tiana, Ryan, and Beth, which all have their different areas: speaker, education, sponsor, PR marketing, and membership. And of course, our legacy leaders, which is a lot of those folks there, are all on the advisory board: David, James, Josh, and Bankham. And thank you for Josh for doing this meeting this week or this month. CPEs, if you signed in with an email address, and then please make a request for CPEs and send it to us, and we will get you a CPE upon request, CPE document upon request. Support OWASP, same stuff, volunteer opportunities like leadership. Everybody in this is a volunteer, so come join us. There's also speaker opportunities like today's. There's also Amazon Smile if you want to do it to OWASP. It's not Austin, it's just OWASP Foundation. You can find them there. And of course, if you really want to do a tax deductible matching, a lot of company matches them with OWASP is a 501c3 organization. You can donate money directly to them. OWASP membership itself is $50 per year, $95 or $500 for a lifetime. And last year was the 20th, so they had some discounts, but I believe those are gone. Corporate memberships are varying, starting at up to $5,000 a year to much higher. And of course, in students, there is a lower rate. You just have to prove that you're a student with a education institution. But of course, there's no membership requirements to participate in a OWASP project or use the materials. If you have any questions, contact Beth. Communication. OWASP Austin has multiple methods that we talk to people and communicate. We have the Slack channel if you want to grab the bit.ly from the screen, or the OWASP Foundation itself has a Slack at that. I believe you have to be an OWASP member for getting onto that one, but I'm not clear on that. Google Groups, anybody can join it. Get the Austin chapter information, like the notifications about this meeting. We also have Meetup. There's LinkedIn, Eventbrite. We have Twitter. On Twitter, we have LastConATX is the handle we use there. There's Facebook, which is also LastConATX, and then YouTube is where this video will be eventually, sooner than later, since I'm not after waiting for certain things. Study group is still meeting every Thursday. They just started a new book. Griff, you want to say something about this? Come off mute and speak. I see he's on here. I may have just jumped on him to do this.
Yeah, we're.
Oh, he's back on mute. You unmuted yourself and then remuted yourself.
All right, let me start again. We just started the Kubernetes book. It's a very slim volume. It's only about 10 or 12 chapters. And we're just starting on chapter 2 this Thursday at noon. So please come join us if you're interested.
And you can find the Zoom information in the Slack channel, or I believe it's also in Meetup. We have a study group Meetup invite on there also for Thursday, 12 to 1. So please join. It's lots of fun. It's always interesting. LastCon 2020 is in pre-planning right now. We have the dates set. October 25th, 26th is the training. We hope to have good amount of training for y'all, and then the conference itself is still 27th, 28th. Tickets are not yet available. We're still hammering those things down with the foundation, but you can find information at lastcon.org. And if you have any questions, or even want to volunteer for different things, or heck, want to be a sponsor, take your organization, be a sponsor, email us at lastcon@owas.org. Or Tiana has other ones, but that one I'll make sure that gets to her. And like I said, LastCon 2021, all the sessions are now up on YouTube. Hopefully y'all can still hear me. The Last Star, one of our volunteers, was great to get these things up last week so you can see all the keynotes, invite speakers, and any particular presentation that was given at LastCon 2021. We always make sure those are on the LastCon channel and YouTube. Sorry, mine's not advancing. There we go. Upcoming chapter events, February 10th. We usually used to have it at the domain. Hasn't been there in 2 years. Unfortunately, it's canceled. All the stuff we just talked about. So hopefully we'll get back to that sometime when people feel more comfortable and we can actually do it. Other upcoming local events, AHA still, I believe, meets occasionally. ISC Squared meets on Monday nights. There's a Cloud Austin meetup, which is now slowing down to quarterly meetings due to Zoom fatigue, I think. ISSA is still meeting. ACP is meeting. Does anybody else want to announce any other local events they want to talk about? Feel free to unmute yourself. Going once, twice. All righty. There's bound to be other ones, so check out Meetup. I know there's so many things out there in Austin. It's kind of amazing sometimes how much is going on. A lot of Zoom fatigue, but it's still good. Now is the time we talk about job opportunities. If anybody has any that are available out there, or if they're looking, they can feel free to unmute yourself and talk and put stuff in chat so people can contact you again too.
Yeah, there are several opportunities on the Dell.com website under the jobs. So if you're interested, it's a great place to work from my perspective.
Thanks, Vern.
I'm not hiring, but I'm actively seeking employment. I've got a very heavy OSINT background, quite a bit of digital forensics and incident response. I'm looking for something dealing with investigations or cyber threat intelligence or incident response. I'll put my Twitter and LinkedIn in the chat.
Thanks, Joe. Anyone else? Well, I will say from my perspective, I work at Visa. We are looking for contractors for some compliance areas of network security. So if you're at all interested in that, you can reach out to me and contact me. There's also a lot of jobs available in the Austin area and remote from Visa, anywhere from pen testers, because our main pen test group here is here in Austin, to network engineering, network security, to developing roles. Austin is one of our larger sites. So if you have any questions, I can help to fill that in. Anyone else? Alrighty. Speaking opportunities, if you were on earlier, you heard Kate said we have our February speaker lined up, but we are always looking for more speakers. So you can email Kate. I got to get a better picture because I don't have, this is kind of a stupid slide. I get Kate and Brew at os.org is where you can email Kate about this. If you'd like to be a speaker about anything, we're nice and friendly about doing any presentation relating to information security, but it's Kate and Brew. Now presenting should be Josh once I stop sharing. I'm just going to hand it over to Josh, who will be doing the CryptoParty 2022.
Awesome. Thanks, Kyle. Let's see. Hopefully you guys can see my screen now. So welcome to the OWASP Austin CryptoParty 2022. It's good to have you all here. So about me real quick, I'm Josh Sokol, CEO and founder of Simporus. Yeah.
Hey, Josh, we don't see presentation mode. We see your side by side. If
you see my side by side.
We see
let me
about
see.
me, and then you see the next slide. Yeah.
Okay. Well, nothing wrong with that. It just spoils the
surprise.
fun. Let me see if I can. Yeah. Hang on. Share desktop 2. Is that better?
Yeah. There you go.
All right. There we go. Now we don't ruin it for y'all. So CEO and founder of Simporus. Thank you, Kyle. Former information security programmer at National Instruments, and I've been involved with OWASP for a very long time, having been Austin chapter leader and a global board member. But we're not here to talk about me. We're here to talk about CryptoParties. I first learned about CryptoParties from an article actually that was talking about Edward Snowden, and it basically said that the first thing he did when he was kind of figuring out what was going on with the NSA was he basically found this little art space behind a furniture store in Hawaii, and he started to hold these little crypto parties where about a couple dozen people got around, and they talked about how to do things to ensure their privacy, to encrypt their data and use the internet anonymously. And so that was kind of the start of these crypto parties. But since then, this has taken off. It's a global thing, and you can actually go to the CryptoParties website and you can find them literally all over the world. Now here at OWASP Austin, we've done these CryptoParties since January 2015. That was when I first came up with the idea of, hey, let's do one of these. Let's do it every year. And we've done it every year with the exception of 2017. That was my mistake because I didn't say, hey, let's do a crypto party. But every year since, we've gone and done that. So what is a crypto party? They're free. They're open to everybody. But the whole goal here is that we're taking these concepts that are usually pretty difficult concepts, things like encryption and data privacy, and we're turning them into things that somebody without any prior knowledge can put to use. Now, it's a decentralized movement. Like I said, these events are all over the world. And really the goal here is just to pass along knowledge about how to protect yourself in the digital space. And that can include things like encrypted communication, preventing being tracked while browsing the web, and just general security advice about computers, phones, and things like that. So why do we CryptoParty? Well, I like to go to The Guardian. The Guardian is a great website. There's lots of articles on there about privacy. And so I pulled a whole bunch of articles. I do this every year, but I try and get the current articles, right? So this one kind of started off 2021, right after we did our last CryptoParty. It was talking about how, this whole rise of work from home, and there's this company that's basically developing a webcam that's going to monitor you while you're at your desk. And it's going to tell the people in charge whether or not you're sitting in front of your computer, right? So obviously there's some privacy concerns there. And then we go, and around April, we talk about how the UK might force Facebook to allow backdoor police access. So now you're having to circumvent things like encryption and things like that in order to give police access to this data. Then we talk about government agencies with this new personal data bill that's saying, hey, you guys can access this data. And this comes from Australia. Then we have things like Sydney, another Australia thing, where there's now fears about this form that was asking researchers to disclose their relationships, what sex they prefer and things like that, because they felt like that might compromise the integrity of the research that they were doing. Then we have Apple. Apple's got this private relay feature, but in China they said, no, you can't use this private relay feature. We want to be able to spy on what users are able to do. You've got things like 9 out of 10 health apps are harvesting user data, which obviously with the whole COVID thing I talked about last year, how there were these vaccine sites, vaccine card sites that basically show it's like a passport online, and how those were compromising users' data. Here we have just another example of that. Again, in Australia seems to be really bad for privacy, by the way, just throwing that out there. This is a case where the police sent an email about sensitive information to the wrong person. This was confidential and personal information about a woman police fined for a COVID lockdown breach under some questionable circumstances. So obviously, if that email goes to the wrong person, they're disclosing health information and whatnot. Here we had another one, which was private companies analyzing facial data from this NHS app. This company was called iProve, and their facial recognition software is used to perform automated ID checks on people signing up for the app. So now we have this data that's sitting out there. Then we got to this point where we're talking about the new warrant and how police are actually looking at Google and using Google to find your location and looking at your search history. And in this case, there was this guy named McCoy, and he found out that this request for him was part of this investigation into a burglary of a nearby home the year before. And the evidence here cast him as a suspect because of the location for his bike ride. And that information got into the police hands. It came through Google. And so the police basically created what's called a geofence warrant because this dude was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And so he was investigated as a criminal because he took a bike ride. In China, man, China is probably, might even be worse than Australia, to be honest with you. Their surveillance machine is insane. They have cameras literally everywhere. They're watching everything people do. And they're actually, they're using this against ethnic minorities. So in this case, there's a group called the Uyghurs. I'm not sure how you say it, Uyghurs, and some other ethnic minorities. And they're using this technology of cameras and monitoring to kind of target these people. This was one there was an article that I talked about probably 2 years ago about these seizures at the border. And this is another one coming from Australia. In this case, there's a software developer, and him and his partner returned home from a 10-day holiday in Fiji. and they were stopped by border officials at the Sydney airport, and they were taken aside and they emptied their suitcase, and the official asked them to write their phone passwords on a piece of paper, and then took their phones away for 30 minutes and brought them into another room to be able to investigate them. So, obviously a pretty big compromise with privacy in that case. And then there was the Olympics that just recently happened at the beginning of the year, where we had these surveillance concerns around China's Winter Olympic app. This was the app was called My 2022. It was used to monitor athletes' health and travel data, but it had this big encryption flaw that left users' files and media vulnerable. Then you have NCA, where they said end-to-end encryption poses a challenge for law enforcers on child abuse. They said that these referrals from social media companies had led to about 500 arrests and safeguarded 650 children every month in the UK. But now they're saying that if we do end-to-end encryption, that's going to be, quote, much more challenging. So, we start to get into these really gray areas. Like, yes, there's a benefit to society of law enforcement having access to this data, but maybe that's data that they shouldn't have. So ultimately, why we CryptoParty is because privacy is this room in which ideas develop, where you can reflect on the ideas whenever you choose. And we're not talking just a physical room, but we're talking digital as well, especially with work from home and things like that. And neither governments nor corporations respect that, but we as individuals do. And so that's why we CryptoParty. Now, we're not going to teach you everything there is to know about computer and internet security in one meeting. Like I said, we've been doing these CryptoParties in January now for years, and I feel like we've barely scratched the surface. There's lots more information out there that you can go and you can try and grab for yourself or for your family. But at least we're giving you a little hint of what is out there. And so with that, today's agenda, we just kind of went through my introduction, talking about CryptoParties and what they are. And then we have some speakers. Now, one of the cool things about CryptoParties is these are short talks. We're talking 5 to 10 minutes. And each of these talks is going to be geared towards giving you some information that you can then take away from here and you can put to use immediately. So with that, I am going to, I don't know if I can stop here and then assign this to Rob Cohen. Rob, I saw you come on a little bit ago.
Yep, I'm here.
Awesome. I see your video. Let's see if we can get you a share. Rob Cohen, more. Kyle, I don't think I have the ability to make Rob a presenter. Could you do that for me, please?
Yeah,
Awesome.
nice.
Take it away,
Didn't do
Rob.
anything, but go ahead, Rob. Cool.
Oh, can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
We see it.
All right, beautiful. Okay, hello everybody. My name is Rob Cohen, and I'm going to be presenting today on a utility called GoPass, which is a very dope command line interface password manager that I use. A little bit about me. In the past, I worked as a security engineer at a variety of different companies, and I was also in the Marine Corps and the Air Force doing cyber as well. Recently, I worked for a company called IOHK as a product manager, project manager, and software engineer working on Cardano, which is a cryptocurrency. So yeah, so I'm just going to proceed forward. If something goes wrong with their presentation, please just let me know. Let me see. Okay, so what the heck is GoPass? GoPass is a password manager for the command line, and it is unsurprisingly written in Go. It's available for pretty much any platform. And right here is the GitHub for that. It's originally based on a utility called Pass that, if memory serves, was a bash wrapper around GPG, basically just encrypting text files in a directory tree. And that's pretty much what it still is. There are other ways to store information, but the utility itself, now written in Go, is sort of, it takes sort of the Unix philosophy of like, do one thing, do it well, and like make it very simple. And as just an editorial, I I use Bitwarden pretty often for a lot of my like low-level security stuff because it works pretty well. Well, actually, just going into the competitors over here. Yeah, so there's a few competitors. There's Bitwarden, which is open source / commercial. There's a commercial sort of version that's hosted, but you can also self-host and get all the features you want. There's also 1Password, LastPass, Dashlane. I'm sure everybody on this call probably has at some point used one of these, but if you do not use a password manager, please use a password manager because it's honestly just convenient. It's very convenient to not need to recall your passwords. There's some general guidelines that I like to follow, such as, you probably shouldn't store the password for your password manager in your password manager, because that's a recursive loop that won't ever be helpful. So, there are a few passwords that you do have to memorize. What I like to do is I like to sort of think of, well, what am I going to do if everything breaks down? What's my recovery process? If I lose access to my email and I need to reset password, is that a password I should be keeping in my password manager, or is that a password that I should be memorized, have memorized and change, reasonably often? But the whole point of using a password manager is to avoid password reuse. It's of course better to always have good two-factor authentication, but what I tell my friends who are non-technical is if you're going to do one thing, use a password manager and correctly manage it. Don't reuse passwords in it, etc. Yeah, so that's editorialized sort of approach. But why actually use GoPass as opposed to any of these others? Well, the cool part about GoPass is that it's command line. So if you're used to doing things on the command line, it's convenient. It also uses Git as a backend, or can use Git as a backend, which is really cool because by default you get version control on your passwords, which is very nice because it makes me feel a little warm and fuzzy when I know that I can replicate my password store to other servers, make backups, and it's all in a format that is not proprietary, that is not built in some way that I can't actually pick apart myself. It's just GPG and text files. So it's really kind of nice. There are mobile clients. There's Android and iOS. There are browser plugins. My general recommendation is to just not use password or browser plugins for password managers. It just sort of makes it too easy to sort of make a chain between a website and your passwords. I personally just cut and paste into the websites that I use, and I recommend doing that. However, this is just a question of usability versus security. And for example, for my mother, I'm not going to tell her to do that. It's okay for her to use a browser integration package because it makes it easier for her. So it's up for debate, but that's how I look at it. There's easy sync with GoPass because it uses Git. Easy backups, I spoke about that. And you can also use multiple stores. So there's not just one store. You can have multiple stores, and I'm going to sort of demo this with an ASCII cinema reproduction of using GoPass. But yeah, it's very cool. You can sort of keep your work and personal passwords separate. And also you can add and remove users that also have access. Of course, if you're using Git, those users also need access to that Git repo to be able to make commits and see and be able to read the passwords. But one of the cool parts about this is that you can remove a user, commit. Obviously, you would need to change the passwords, but then commit again, and then that user won't be able to access the new passwords. So there you go. If you want to install GoPass, one of the easier ways is to just run go install. This presumes you have a working Go installation. But there are also Docker utilities and other things that, if you just want to give it a spin, it makes it significantly easier to run. I'm not going to address that during this presentation, but it is a convenient way to use Go, especially if you're only using it on a machine that's, for example, a transitional machine. I use Cubes OS often, and sometimes it's just easy to not install Go. Let's keep going here. Right, so there's a cheat sheet, which I'm going to pull up. This is a pretty convenient sort of cheat sheet that I recommend if you're trying to use Go Pass, that you can sort of rely on this to quickly get started. Very simple. You can you need to have your GPG keys. You can initialize a store. You can generate passwords, and again, this is all sort of a directory structure, which you can choose to either have encrypted or not encrypted, so you don't leak information. And then this goes into the synchronization, and this is really just a wrapper around Git. And you can, this is how you would add other people to be able to change the read and change passwords. So moving on, let's go back here. There are a few problems that I've noticed. The iOS version doesn't support multiple stores, which is not great. It's also not quite as smooth as Bitwarden is on iPhones. The Android version is better, but for now, I'm using an iPhone as my primary phone. So yeah, it also might be risky to sync against like public GitHub, public GitLab repos, or even private repos. Personally, I like to use something like Tailscale or some sort of WireGuard implementation to remotely connect to my local network, where I have a self-hosted Git server where I do the syncing there, which might be a little bit much for some people, but it's nice to know that I have full control over the entire stack. So before I go to questions, I think I'm going to go back over here and just show a quick demo. This is from an earlier version of GoPass. So hopefully this isn't too painful for everybody to watch. So this is the installation, obviously in some sort of Debian distro. So this just does the completion, auto completion for, I think this is like a Zsh shell. It's probably bash. No, it's a bash shell. Let's see. Yep. So there's no store. You need a GPG key. You generate the key. Let's skip forward a little. Okay, maybe I can't. This is the passphrase that you'll be typing in every time if you want to edit or review your passwords. Let's skip forward here a little. So you're selecting which key you're going to use. So now you're generating. This is sort of the way that you can reference items within the GoPass sort of store that you have set up. So you can have like email, Gmail / whatever, and then the last thing would be the text file that actually has the access. So this is the generated password. Yep. So now it's committed. You probably have to sync it. And this is displaying the secret. Now this is potentially a negative. Obviously, if you're traveling or whatever and you're displaying the password on screen, that might not be good. But you can install Xclip or something like that, and you don't actually have to display it on screen. You can just have it go straight in your clipboard. Yeah, so there's the clip timeout. Various configuration settings. And you can sort of display your stores. So these are two separate stores. And you can add recipients. Anyway, so that's pretty much the presentation. Does anybody have any questions on GoPass or any suggestions?
So I'm going to defer all questions to the end just to make sure everybody has time. But thank you very much for the presentation, Rob. Up next is Bertold. Bertold is going to talk about maintaining email privacy and keeping inboxes free from unwanted and unsolicited emails. So Rob, if you can stop sharing, Bertold, I think you can just click share. At least that's what Rob was able to do.
Just a second. Yep. Okay, can you see my screen?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not seeing it yet.
Yeah, let me just let me try again. It's not letting me.
Oh.
Yeah, I got a big. Why don't you guys go ahead with the next presentation? I'll relaunch Zoom. Maybe it has permission issues. I don't know.
All right, we can do that. And then we'll come back to you. Kyle, do you want to talk to us about Cryptomator or Cryptometer? How do you say it? I guess that's my first question for you.
Yeah, I typically call it Cryptomator.
Cryptomator. All right.
Let's see if we can get this sharing
Right the
working
first time.
too.
There we go.
Hey, look at that. So this is encrypting personal storage with an open source project. Cryptomator is a product that runs on typically Windows, and I think they may have a Unix. I don't know if they have a Mac version of this. You run Windows, so that's typically what I think of. It encrypts, it creates a virtual drive and will encrypt data, then you can store that data up in the cloud, and it works fairly seamlessly. The concerns I had originally when I started looking at this is kind of the subpoena concept. Cloud providers can get subpoenaed anytime for any data that's there. They typically do have to contact the data owner, but there is also the concept that some judges and prosecutors want to chase down is that any data not accessed in over so many days can be considered abandoned, which is really bizarre when you consider how much stuff we store in the cloud nowadays is just storage, truthfully. And you may store things like your financial documents or even medical documents up there, which really you don't want to share with anybody in their world. And then, of course, you have the data sovereignty issue with different domains of where the cloud provider is hosting things that hopefully they're hosting it within your own country, but you just never know sometimes. So you may have other protections that are not applicable that you don't get because you're hosting it in a cloud provider that they're hosting it, say, in Mexico if you're in Texas. They just happen to have a data center down there instead. So I was looking at other tools years ago. I was using something called Vivo that was by PKware, which does PKzip, but they actually turned off their program about 3 years ago. So I had to find something new, and this is what I went with. You can find Cryptomator at cryptomator.org. Imagine that. And they're really talking about how to encrypt your data quickly and easily and upload it and upload it into the cloud via the virtual drive concept. I'm going to be quick here. I basically took a lot of their blurbs. It's taking security into your own hands. Encrypted locally is a simple tool for digital self-service. in self-defense. Most cloud providers do encrypt your data during the transition. They also don't tend to do it up at the cloud itself. So your medical documents and maybe storing in OneDrive is actually not encrypted. And of course, Cryptomator is open source, and it's their data. Their product is latest standards, meaning like AES and 256 key encryption that you could do. And I found it just a very simple tool to use in the long run. They are open source, so they've been audited a few times. The different audit responses are up on their website. They claim to be GDPR compliant with synchronization in your cloud and things like that. So they have a GDPR compliant document at their website. And like I said, they're open source. So all their source code is actually in GitHub. So, you know, open source, it's available, but nobody looks at it as usual. So typically, since they've been audited, they have had other organizations look at it. But you have all these things that for Cryptomator that you can use for storage of stuff. Let's see. Oops, I think I went too far. And here's how you start it out. Basically, you just download the software. So yes, they do have a Mac OS, they have an Android, they have iOS. You can store all these different tools that you have that you can store it into either Dropbox, Azure, your OneDrive, Google Drive. So you basically just say create a new vault, create a password, and it tells you how the strength of the password. Right there, it says, oh, it's a good one, it's a bad one. You can store this in GoPass. You can store wherever you want to store your password to make sure you don't lose it, because once they don't store it anywhere else. It's all for yourself and all those things. So you want to make sure you either hopefully remember it, but make a complex password and put it up on the cloud too, or into your own personal password manager. So you open a new vault and you say, oh, where do I want to store it? What do I want to call it? And it shows, hey, reveal new drive, or even put in a custom mount point. Being Windows, it'll mount it as, say, drive X. So therefore, you just use it like any other thing. But when you go to like I said, I store mine all as OneDrive. So when I go to OneDrive, I see a Cryptomator drive in there, but it has a bunch of random files and files and directories and things like that have no names that you can't backtrack to because it's all encrypted. Yeah, this one's in Y, so I had a Dropbox example here. Add files. So there's the example of the Dropbox vault up there. It says master key, but that's all the local stuff, and it's actually how it's deal with the encryption. And it shows you if you're actually doing stuff inside Cryptomator. It shows the throughput of the encryption, decryption, and downloading and things like that. And alternatives. There are other alternatives. Encrypted file system, obviously it's there. You can use a file system, open source. It's available for anything. You can do that, but it is really your own. There was VeraCrypt, which was a branch of TrueCrypt, if anybody had used that back in the past. I mean, obviously it shut down in 2014 due to a whole bunch of non-audited responses they found. It's still a virtual hard drive, so you basically make a hard drive and then you detach it and store it in OneDrive. It's encrypted, so that works pretty well. Their latest release was just this year, or just this month. There's also an alternative that Cryptomator talks about on the website called BoxCrypt. It's closed source. I mean, they have a whole comparison, BoxCrypt versus Cryptomator. Not saying it's bad, not saying whichever one you want to, just they have different slightly different use cases, and one's a commercial one, so you have a commercial company to work with. So that's always some people's desires. Integrations, there are also other integrations that you can do. There's something called Mountain Duck from the same company that Cryptomator came from, and they can use that for integrating with Finder and the File Explorer. And it simplifies it even further, even though Cryptomator, you can see, isn't really a complicated product to begin with, but makes it be more simple. There's also more additional client-side encryption that you can do. Yeah, encryption at rest, because that's really what I'm looking at on a lot of this, is the data encryption at rest at the cloud. And is that my last screen? I think it was, and I think that's all I really had to say. So I mean, if you want to look at Cryptomator, it's a way to store things locally and then encrypt them at your local site and store them in the cloud encrypted. So feel free to find that product. If you have any questions, just ask me.
Awesome. Thank you, Kyle. Thanks for talking about Cryptomator. Up next is Joe Gray talking about OPSEC and usernames. Joe, share away when you are ready.
Sorry about that. I was having to play Tetris with my screen. So let me do a quick screen share here. So I'm just going to do a quick level set. Please confirm that you can see my layperson OSINT definition screen.
Yes, sir, we got it.
Perfect. So OSINT is one of my major passions, and to that end, there's OSINT oftentimes is kind of like porn. And what I mean by that is it's kind of hard to define. And I never get the attribution of the quote right, but someone once said, I can't really define what porn is, but I know it when I see it. And that's what I'm getting at with OSINT. There's a lot of ambiguity in terms of the definition and what is and is not OSINT. In the past, I've had disagreements with managers about whether Nmap is OSINT or whether attempting like password resets to confirm email addresses would be OSINT. And my honest opinion is neither of them are. They both have an intelligence aspect and context to them, but neither is truly OSINT. So basically, just to level set, OSINT is information gathered from public sources that we use in an intelligence context. A lot of the stuff can be shared willingly, such as the case with social media posts or press releases, because we have the agency to either post or not post, and we also have the agency to release or not release the press release. It's also part of the cost of doing business. That would be the case with DNS. And I will be honest, DNS is my favorite OSINT vector when surveilling a business or an organization, but that's not what we're talking about today. Also, for those of us in the US, because of the data broker economy, there's a lot of cost of doing business related stuff there as well. But when I mention the intelligence context, basically it seeks to answer the questions of, is this legal? Is this ethical? How does it further my investigation? Is this within scope? Why do I care? And, honestly, that's something we want to look at and get a little bit deeper in whenever we work through any investigation, right? We don't want to collect things just because it's there to collect. We want to collect it because it's meaningful and it furthers our investigation. So what I'm going to talk about today is specifically usernames. And I'm glad that this is coming after a presentation about password managers because honestly, I treat the two kind of similarly to a degree. So why usernames? It's because people are creatures of habit. We don't want to deviate from our norms, right? I'm C_3P Joe on many platforms, but not every platform. And especially in the hacker community, when we establish a handle or a nick or what have you, we tend to try to use that everywhere. But with that, it can be a problem in terms of maintaining our own privacy. And we can see this very easily within celebrities and influencers. They're going to have pretty much the same handle everywhere. Same thing with like public figures and politicians. And then, as I already stated, people within the security and InfoSec community. So we have a username. Okay, so what? Well, depending on how the site is built, we may be able to confirm that an account exists or doesn't exist without even logging in. It's very easy. At a minimum, we might be able to see if the username is in use. And basically, this gets into HTTP post versus get. Because with get, we can manipulate the URL to input a username, whereas with post, it's a little bit different. So in an investigative perspective, especially when looking at people, it's very helpful in determining where to look next. It can be used to confirm data or build a dossier, whichever we choose to go with. So there are a variety of different ways we can do this. I'm only going to show the web interface version of it today, but there is a standalone tool as well for this. And pardon me, I clicked the wrong tab here. As usual, I have to have 75,000 tabs open at any given time. But this is What's My Name, whatsmyname.app. The original What's My Name tool was written by Micah Hoffman, web breacher, with assistance of several of the folks you see there and the authors. This web application was created and is maintained by OSINT Combine out of Australia. If you use Spiderfoot, this uses the exact same JSON file. If you use SnowInt, ReconNG's profiler module, several other things, they all use the same JSON file. But ultimately, the way this works is we put in a username, and we can say all categories, which is what I would do during a normal investigation, or we can say we only want to look at things associated with the following. So for demonstration purposes, I leave it at all exclude porn. We put in a username. Here's a username of someone who gave me consent to search for them. And here we go. This is showing us links to all sorts of things. So for example, we just click bug crowd. Oh, look, there it is. We're not logged in, right? So that makes it a very powerful technique. Furthermore, we can go a little bit further. Here's GitHub. Again, we're not logged in. So anybody could do this. Anyone could even script this, to be honest. As you can see here on the right, we can also copy it, export it as Excel, CSV, or PDF. So if we're going to put these accounts into, say, a specific Python script, we could use CSV. Same thing if we're using a Jupyter Notebook, which is still Python in many cases, or what have you. We can also look through and see what else is here. This one right here, I just recently clicked this one. This one is a bit concerning because this is Duolingo. So right here, we're able to go through, we can see all this stuff. So in terms of a streak, we can see if they're a moderator, if it's tied to a Facebook. So this confirms a Facebook account. Doesn't appear as if there's a phone number tied to it, but we can look at their streaks, their tiers of completion, spending, and so on. But if we scroll down further, we get a location. We can see their current course. So in this case, they're learning Spanish from English. We get a creation date, which as I hover over it, we actually see that this is epoch time converted. So that account's been there for a while, but we see they've played with Spanish and Polish. So this is one of the more concerning things that I see here. And honestly, I'm not sure if there's anything that could be done about that. I am sure there could be, but I've not reflected on it enough yet. So here's some Twitter archive stuff. It's based on the Wayback Machine. I think the other one still stands in here somewhere because it doesn't always go in order. That actually shows from shadowban.eu to confirm whether there's a Twitter account. Within this, sometimes the Proton mail ones work, sometimes they don't. But what I typically do from here is with a username, okay, I've now got a name tied to it. So I'll try the name as a username. And there's another one that's going to come up that's a bit concerning, and that's Keybase. And with this being CryptoParty, this is very timely for us because notice, again, I'm not logged in. There's the fingerprint. Okay, no big deal. Here's a Stellar Lumens address, so we can go look at the ledgers for that. We confirm a Twitter, a GitHub, and a Reddit. If we click here on the devices, they have their own blockchain of sorts. We can see there's the paper key. We also have 2 computers and a mobile. We can see the host naming conventions here. So Viking themed names. We also see this is a Note 8. So if we were looking to do any technical exploitation, we know we probably want to look at Android vulnerabilities. And if we look at the chain here, we can look at the history of everything. So there's the Twitter, GitHub, Reddit, and then we go further. There's a Facebook account. I'm not going to click on the link for it because it shows pictures of his kids. We see ownership of Savage Sec. We can bounce this off of LinkedIn and confirm that. Keep going. NOPSEC, that would also be confirmed via LinkedIn. And then we just continue going further. And then we see the Stellar key. And that was in 2019 when basically any Keybase user got quite a bit of Stellar lumens. And I'm really, really salty that I didn't take advantage of that. But if we go back here, taking from this, I've actually found fake Keybase sites from doing the site Google Dork with the actual fingerprint in it. And I split it up into 4s as such. And in this case, or I'm sorry, not the site, in text. I got ahead of myself there. So in this case, it just shows Keybase, but in the past, I've actually seen others that are not Keybase. So with usernames, that's why this is so important. To show you what this operates off of, basically it all comes off of a singular JSON file, the web accounts list JSON file. So this is the actual file. There's everything that we saw on the website. But the way it works is, I'm just going to scroll down. We'll look at CNET, for example. So right here. So it has a name. There's the check URI. So in this case, it would be /profiles/account. We've got our HTTP codes. If it's a real account, we'll get 200. If it's not, we'll get a 301. If it exists, it'll say a little about me. If it doesn't, then we'll see page not found. There's the category and whether it's set to valid or not. We can edit this if we use like the standalone Python tool, we can actually edit this. So that way we can only look for certain things if we want to. So for example, we see John and Bob are the 2 test accounts for this. So we'll just look at John. So right here, we see it says a little about me. That's what it's looking for. I'm just using Kate as an example here. In this case, we get a 404 as opposed to a 301. But nevertheless, it's going to be the same type of outcome. So basically what I'm getting at from a privacy and OPSEC perspective is that regarding usernames, it helps to have the same username if you want to be found, but depending on how private you're trying to be, it may make more sense to actually be more judicious with the use of your usernames. Consider using a password manager to create a random string for your username. Allow it to create a short password, obviously without special characters. Move that to the username and then let it create an actual real password for you. If you don't want to be found. If you do want to be found, then no big deal. But know that this is a very powerful passive vector that basically has a very small barrier to entry in that you have to have internet connectivity and either a browser or access to Python or any of the many tools that uses this same code. And that's all I've got. Let me briefly turn my camera on and wave and say hello. So that's all I've got. I'll turn it back over to you, Josh.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Joe. Great presentation. Bertold, let's see if we got your issue fixed up now. Look at that. Perfect.
All right. Can you hear me, Ma? I try to keep it brief since we don't have a whole lot of time. Just a little bit about me. I work at a small startup here in town. We are hiring. I posted some links in there. I also run my mail server, which is just kept me thinking about a little bit email privacy. And this is just a few tips that I figured I might share with you, in the vein of CryptoParties. So, obviously, one of the first things that not everybody's thinking about is, just adding this multi-factor, two-step verification, two-factor authentication, however you want to call it, to your account. And there are so many apps available that that you can use in addition to if you want to go back to the old simple way of doing things with just a text message. But the authenticator apps are much more secure in some sense, and there are a couple of options, and I even left out a few because I couldn't count them all. So it just shows my screen, for example, what I have turned on for some of the accounts that I'm trying to protect. That way, you cannot the number one thing for email privacy is just keeping the unwanted eyes off of your emails. The second thing that not many people necessarily think about is that it's hardly ever that you have an end-to-end encryption on your email messages, and those emails go over multiple hops, and it's unfortunately SMIME didn't prevail at the time. So just do not send sensitive information via email. Try other means. One of my favorite ways of doing this is recently is Signal. You want to have somebody send a secure message. I love their disappearing messages feature. It's an open source application that has been scrutinized by security researchers, and then it has great apps for both the desktop as well as mobile devices. So yeah, think about that. What do you send in an email message, and what you should and shouldn't send in there? But just bear in mind that somebody else may be looking at that. The other is that if you don't need those old emails, especially if you have it, just delete them and get rid of them. And for example, in Google, Google Mail, if you're using that, but you may not necessarily realize that, for example, the all mail folder has a lot of these messages, and Gmail, for example, by default just archives emails. They don't delete them. They want to, I guess, use them for improving their algorithm. So that's one of those ways to, again, if you don't have them anymore and then you don't need them, why do you keep them? One of these new features especially if you're on the Mac user, Apple user front, then this is like a really cool feature. And then it was so funny to read online how a lot of these email marketing firms started to freak out because of this new feature that is now built into Apple's own operating system and the iPhone, iPad operating system that just hides your IP address from email activity, and it's a single one-line toggle to turn on, which is really great. I like it a lot. Even before that, I was just turned off loading remote content on your emails. You could do that in the Mail app. That way, those hidden images or hidden trackers that are often embedded in emails don't show up. And don't render, don't ping the server that you actually opened an email if you care about that. The other option, of course, is just using providers that have high privacy protection. And somebody else already mentioned ProtonMail. Of course, is based in Switzerland, so they have their own rules. Fastmail, although they have US data centers, but they are also, proud. They are pretty proud of their privacy stance, and they have a very slick user interface. I used Fastmail in the past, and a lot of other cool features that make it easier for you to hide for example, your real email address. And so, last, that maybe not least, I wanted to share that sometimes not just the email content, but your email addresses can be also something that can be used as a way to keep unwanted emails from your mailbox. So, for example, Google Mail has this option to add a plus sign after your email address so that you can filter those emails. So they call them task-based emails. But that way you can filter the emails that are coming into your mailbox, or even set up rules inside Google Mail to delete them if that business doesn't want to stop sending you emails. Yahoo has a nice cool feature called Disposable Addresses, where they create a unique prefix for you, and then you can just add with keywords, and this is what you can give to businesses instead of your real email address. And then again, you can do email filtering, or just as the name suggests, you can just delete that email and address if you can't get rid of all those shopping sites from sending you emails, and you will never see them again. And the other new cool feature, again, in the Apple ecosystem is this Hide My Email for iCloud Plus subscribers. That is like really nice because it has support for hiding your email address, and whoever you're emailing will get a random uniquely assigned email. So that's pretty much I wanted to share today. Thank you so much. I work for a small startup in town, and we are hiring. Please feel free to reach out. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thank you very much. All right. Well, we're at the top of the hour now, so I just wanted to quickly call out a couple of privacy charities. If you're feeling charitable, EFF, Electronic Frontier Foundation, great resource. Donate to. They help to protect your data privacy. ACLU, American Civil Liberties Union, is another really good one. So with that, thank you all for attending. Really appreciate having you all here. Hopefully you enjoyed the crypto party. Hopefully you learned something that you can take away back to your daily life. So with that, that's the end of our meeting. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Feel free to see the meetup and the Eventbrite soon.
Thank you, Josh.
Thanks, Josh, and all the speakers.
Thank you.
Yay.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.